Hey guys, Prowl 1701 here, and today we're going to talk about modern Doctor Who. And my question is, what is your least favorite story from each series of modern Doctor Who? Not necessarily the one you might think is objectively the worst, but just the one that personally is your least favorite. Because I do think the worst and least favorite could be different things, as I consider worst to be an objective thing, least favorite to be a more subjective thing. For Series 1, for example, my least favorite these days is probably either Father's Day or the World War III two-parter. I can't really pick between them. Neither one of them do much for me now. I could see people arguing for the long game, but I actually enjoy aspects of the long game. It's really hard for me to pick between the World War III two-parter, which still does stuff I like, and Father's Day, which still does some stuff I like. I just don't really get into those episodes a lot. Series 2 is definitely Fear Her. Fear Her is just terrible. Easily my least favorite Tennant story, one of my least favorite Doctor Who stories. I don't care for Fear Her at all. I think it's an absolute mess. You know, it being pulled off the iPlayer is no big loss for me. I mean, I can't watch the iPlayer anyway, but it's still no big loss. Series 3... it's probably Smith and Jones. I don't know why. Just these days, I never had the urge to revisit that one. Like I used to be, I would argue 42. Because I think 42 is one of the weaker ones of the series. I think all of Series 3 is good. Series 3 is probably my favorite modern series. Season series. Probably my favorite series of the modern series. And I like all of the stories to one degree or another, but I feel like Smith and Jones is just the one that I just don't ever feel like going back and rewatching. I haven't rewatched the Tennant era much in a while anyway, but that's the one I'm kind of just like, maybe it's because I've seen it so many times, that's true of all of the season. 42 might be a close second. It's really hard to pick because I like all of that season to one degree or another. Series 4, I would say Turn Left. I just never got into Turn Left. I've talked about that in other videos, so I'm not going to go into details about it here. It's great character growth for Donna, but I just don't really get into the story. The linchpin of the story, the Doctor dying, I just don't buy that, so the whole story kind of falls apart for me. It's not one I ever like to go back and rewatch anymore. The 2009 specials, easily Waters of Mars. I think that's a great idea on paper, but it never works for me. I can't quite explain why, to be honest. I just like the other stories more. I like The Next Doctor. I love Planet of the Dead, and I enjoy The End of Time. It's the only one of those 4 specials that I just am not really enamored with. So it's easily my least favorite of the 2009 specials. Series 5... it's a really tough choice between the Silurian two-parter and Amy's Choice. I don't really care for either of those. I would probably say the Silurian two-parter just because it's 2 episodes instead of 1. I don't like the Silurian redesign, and I find the story incredibly boring. At least Amy's Choice does a couple neat things I like, even though I'm not very fond of it either. Series 6 is kind of tough because Series 6 has several rough episodes, especially in its back half. I would probably say the Let's Kill That Guy one that starts off part 2 of Series 6. I don't really care for that one. It does a couple neat things and has a couple things that play into the season finale there, but I don't really care for it. There's a lot of that second half of Series 6 that just kind of drags and falls flat, honestly. Including the finale, which isn't that great. Series 7, that's also a tough one. I would say The Power of Three. Journey of the Center of the Tardis probably deserves to be in a mention there. Dinosaurs on a Spaceship deserves to be in that conversation, I think, as well. Time of the Angels really isn't that good, but I feel like Power of Three is probably my least favorite. Ooh, a Chris Chibnall episode. I find it boring. It has a couple of very amusing moments in it. It really does. And it's nice to see Amy and Rory kind of grappling with Doctor life versus real life. That's interesting. But for the most part, I just don't care for it. It just falls flat for me. Series 8, Kill the Moon. Easily Kill the Moon. I mean, you got some other duds in there, like In the Forest of the Night and The Caretaker, but Kill the Moon, easily the worst of the season, in my opinion. My least favorite of the season, certainly, and I think worst of the season, too. Series 9 is a little tricky because I'm not a huge fan of Series 9 in general. I would probably say the two-parter with the Game of Thrones girl in it, Malaysia Williams or whatever her name is. The girl who died and the woman who lived. I don't really care for either of those. I mean, if you're counting them as separate episodes instead of as a two-parter, I'd say part 2 is probably worse than part 1. But I'll be honest, I don't like either one. Not that, again, I'm not a big fan of Series 9 to begin with. That's probably my least favorite, that two-parter there. Series 10, the second and third part of the Monk trilogy. Series 10 does have a few duds in it. Oxygen is definitely in that conversation. I can't stand Oxygen. It's probably a tie, actually, between parts 2 and 3 of the Monk trilogy, because I actually like Extremis and Oxygen, because all 3 of those are just garbage episodes, in my opinion. Series 11, Arachnids in the UK. It's just easily Arachnids in the UK. One of the worst Doctor Who episodes ever made. I can't stand it. Series 12, The Timeless Children. Just awful on so many levels. I've talked about it before. I'm not going to go into details on it here. But definitely, I think, the worst of the series. And I actually like most of Series 12. I think it's a very strong series for the most part, with a really bad series finale. You know, they just kind of spiked the ball on the 1-yard line there. Flux, I'd probably say episode 3, Once Upon Time. I don't even remember what the heck happens in that episode, I'll be honest with you. I'm not a big fan of Flux, but although I think episodes 2 and 4 would have made strong standalone episodes. And there's parts of episode 5 I really like. But episode 3, I don't even remember much of it. I remember not really liking it, I think, but I don't remember much of it. And then the Jodie Whittaker specials, definitely Legends of the Sea Devils, because I like Eve of the Daleks and I love Power of the Daleks. They're both great stories. Legends of the Sea Devils was just garbage, and I think a lot of that is the edit. I think it just got ruined in the edit. I don't know what happened there. I would love to get a behind-the-scenes look at what the heck happened to Legend of the Sea Devils, because the edit to it is so wonky. Easily the worst edited Doctor Who story I've ever seen. It's weird. For the 60th anniversary specials, I enjoy all 3 of them. My least favorite was probably the Star Beast. I still enjoy it. I really liked Wild Blue Yonder, and I liked The Giggle? Yeah, The Giggle as well. But Star Beast was probably my least favorite. Moving into Season 1, my least favorite's got to be Empire of Death. It's just so disappointing. One of the most disappointing season finales I think Doctor Who has ever had. Very underwhelming. I really came out of it deflated and unimpressed, with my jaw hanging open for all the wrong reasons. Definitely not a worthy follow-up for Sutekh, not a worthy sequel to Pyramids of Mars, one of the greatest Doctor Who stories ever made. There's just a lot of really stupid things going on in Empire of Death, a lot of stupid things. And the fact that it's very easy to recognize from close to the beginning of the episode that it's just going to be one big reset button, that everything's going to reset. There's no consequences, so there's no tension, because you know everything's going to get fixed at the end. And yeah, that just doesn't work for me. So that's my least favorite stories from all of modern Doctor Who thus far. I want to know what you think of my choices, and I want to know which stories you would pick. So comment down below, and let's talk about it. Don't forget to click the like button and the subscribe button as well. I also have a Patreon if you would like to support me on that. I want to give a shout out to a couple of my top tier patrons, Colin Coney and Finn Perkins, and Sam Venning as well. I appreciate their support, as I do the support of all of my patrons. I also have a P.O. box if there's anything you'd like to send me to look at and review. I have a link to my Amazon wishlist down there. I have a link to my Amazon UK wishlist down there as well if you want to check those out. Most importantly, thank you for watching.